Bruce Cardenas has a passion to serve others and is always looking for an opportunity to do just that. In this episode, Bruce tells us an incredible story of helping out a young 19-year-old kid with an introduction, only to find out 15 plus years later at this year's Super Bowl that it completely changed the kid's life. This is the No Excuse to Miss podcast. Welcome to the No Excuse to Miss podcast. I'm your host, Scott Volkortson, and this week's guest is one that I've been looking forward to for some time. He's a former Marine. He's worked for the LAPD. He served as Chief Communication Officer for Quest Nutrition, operates a security detail service for A-list celebrities. He is also a brand builder and consultant for several other businesses. Basically, what I'm trying to say is he does it all. Welcome to the show, Bruce Cardenas. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks for the kind introduction. I appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time. Like we were talking right before we recorded, we met out in Las Vegas through our late mutual friend, John Bartolo. And, I've always admired what you do ever since I was able to meet you in person. So I would like to dive into a couple different things here. But first, can you just give us a little bit of a background of where you came from and kind of how you got to here?
I'll try not to bore you, but I'll just say this. Listen, I was a middle-class kid in a little town called Highbridge, New Jersey, which was a steel mill town, one of 5 kids. And my boyhood dream was always to be a police officer. And I think what changed my life was I got out of high school and there was no conversation with my family about college, but my other siblings, they were going to college. So I don't know if my dad and my parents just looked at me like, hey, he's going to be a blue collar guy or be a cop. So he doesn't need to go to college. I think, but what happened was I was working and you would have called me like a cop groupie. It was literally a 7-person department and I did ride-alongs with them and they all liked me. And one day I said to the chief, hey, I want to join the department. I'm 19. And he said, listen, go in the Marine Corps. His words were exactly, go in the Marine Corps, and when you get out, I'll hire you. He goes, right now you're a little young, a little immature. In his own kind mentoring words, he, kind of made me feel good about myself. But so I grabbed my best friend and said, hey man, we got to go in the Marine Corps. We're not doing a whole lot in this town, Highbridge, New Jersey. So I went in the Marine Corps and I realized, holy shit, there's a big world. I don't know if you can relate this, but when I grew up in New Jersey, I kind of thought that was the world. Like, oh, I've heard about other places, but New Jersey is where it's happening. So when I got out in the Marine Corps, there's a big world. And I realized there was a lot of opportunities. And so it just kind of started from there. And while I was a grunt in the Marine Corps, I had some opportunities. I ended up being on a security detail for one of the generals in the Marine Corps. So I got that taste of service. I've always been in the service industry. I've always been serving others. And I was at Camp Pendleton in California for a powerlifting meet when I was still in the Marine Corps. And there was a career day on base. And I saw these companies, IBM and the CHP, and they were like, we're hiring. And I was like, holy cow, beautiful weather, beautiful people. And at the time, it's all relative what the pay was. Let's say they started at $50,000 at the time. I was like, wow, and benefits. So I started processing with police departments, and there was no online. I'm dating myself a little bit. So I had to write the cities. They sent me an application. So I ended up processing, and LAPD picked me up first, and I had other opportunities after that, but LAPD picked me up first, and I joined the police academy and kind of started my career, which was really a boyhood dream. And that kind of started
how long did you do that for the LAPD?
So I did it full time for 12 years. What happened was while I was a cop, and just like many careers, I wasn't making enough money. I felt I needed to do some. So I worked some side work for a retired Beverly Hills guy who had a security business. And he had a lot of celebrities, and I did a couple details for him. And one of his clients really took a liking to me. He's a chairman of a company. And to this day, he's still a client, believe it or not, 30 years later. Wow. He took a liking to me and said, hey, Bruce, after about a year, he said, I really want to hire you. So he went to the owner of the security company. I did it very ethically. And they gave him some money to basically buy me out, basically. And I started my own security company. I got the license and insurance. I said, okay, well, it's not that hard. It's not rocket science. So I figured out how to do it. And over the course of a few years, I literally went from, and it was all relationships. Like I started working with him, and then a friend of mine had a transportation company, limo company. And I said, hey, I started the security business. He said, oh, let me open up my Rolodex. And next thing I know, I'm doing security with this, chairman of Sony Music and this artist and that artist. And it became so overwhelming. And I think one of my downfalls was I was not educated in managing a business or money. I was self-taught in how to build relationships. So I could go meet you, win you over, get your business. But then I didn't have the back structure of knowing about finance or how clients take 30, 60, 90 days to pay. So I had a good run for a few years. It got up to the point where, listen, for being a working cop, I was doing a few $1 million a year in business. So I was on my way.
Yeah.
And, so I left the police department because time management, you only have so many hours a day, right? So I was a cop. So I left to run the security business and run that full time. But there were some challenges because hiring the right, listen, one thing is, what came quick to me is people wanted me to be available. So when celebrity A was coming in town, Bruce, are you free? I was like, oh my gosh, I have another client this week. And then you start sending other people. So I had to train people quickly and have them understand how I believe things should be done, how it's a good fit. So, but anyway, it was a great run, and I still do it actually, but I've, obviously done other things, but I still do the security business. I actually still have that one original client who comes out occasionally. And, but yeah, it's definitely been I'm in the service space for sure. I figured that out after all these years, from being a cop to a Marine to security business, or even the food space, you're serving others. And I'm quite content with it. Because that's just my role in life, is being a servant, but in a good way. I think I change people's lives. I think I change people's lives in everything I do, from whether a cop to Marine to security to the food space. It's changed people's lives in a good way.
Well, and did you have any issues like trusting the people you were hiring that they were going to do it to your expectations as far as the way you were going to treat people? And, you just talked about being of service. Did you know that they were going to be able to be of service and represent you in the way that you wanted?
That was one of my major learning lessons. A lot of people, I had a partner that was with, I worked some time with him at LAPD, and I put him on a couple details. And I didn't realize he didn't have the same enthusiasm I did. His was more like, okay, great, Bruce has put me on this gig, I'm going to make some money. And he would underwhelm the clients. But I would start getting feedback like, hey, Bruce, I know you weren't available, but where's, this guy did. And actually, I lost some clients because of that. I actually sent a guy to Mexico with one of the most high profile singers, entertainers in the world. And he was just comfortable. And I would have these conversations with guys. Listen, I know it sounds strange, but when you're in the security space, you don't sit down at dinner with him. You sit at the bar. There's certain things you don't do. You don't talk to them. Even, listen, even celebrities are nice to you. Hey, how's your day today, Scott? It's wonderful, ma'am. But people have a tendency to think they're just, I always, it's called the social cues. I say it. You have to know your audience. Just because celebrity A says, hey, Scott, how's your day today? All I would ever say, it's wonderful, ma'am. That doesn't open up for, hey, by the way, it's wonderful. Oh, my kid's sick this morning and whatever. Because at the end of the day, let's just be candid. And I used to tell these guys, they don't care. They're being kind to you because you're providing a service. But if you think there's anything beyond that, and that's where it's a struggle. I feel it's a struggle, but in security particularly. Well, I spent 6 days with Tom Cruise, but he started talking to me. He's not talking to you. He just acknowledged you as a human being because he's a nice person. And if he offers you lunch, that doesn't mean to sit down with him. That means to go over to craft service and grab a burger. But you're not sitting with him in his trailer. So it was a struggle, and I did lose some clients. And I had to had to create a training format where I hired a guy, and we would sometimes spend a weekend. Which now I'm really in tune with training people and culture is training people on, hey, here's what we have to do to provide the service, and no matter what, we can't deviate from it.
And I would imagine as time's gone on and social media became a much more popular thing, that it'd be tempting, especially for younger people in that industry, to, try to take a picture here or there with a celebrity, just either for their social media page or even just to take so they have it. So how has the security evolved from just because of the way society has changed over the last 30 or 40 years that you've been doing this?
It's definitely changed. Social media has a play now. I mean, my policy, it's funny. If you look back at some of my throwback pictures, which I'm known for, even from the 80s and 90s, most pictures I have with celebrities happen just serendipitously. I would be at a premiere with celebrity A, and I didn't even have a phone then. I think I had a pager. And, the paparazzi would catch pictures on online or on the red carpet, and somehow they'd end up wherever. People magazine, and it's funny. The first time I ended up in a magazine, it was with Sammy Davis Jr. My mom called me and goes, "You're in People magazine." I'm like, "I am." So of course I went out and bought 10 copies. But so I would occasionally get caught in the background of a photo or with somebody, and that's kind of how that happened. But I fast forward, I don't really like people. And it's a problem because especially celebrities. I was with someone recently, and one of my guys was looking at his phone, and she said, there's no effing phones on the set. Like, put your damn phone away. And I had to remind him, listen, they don't care if you're looking at your phone because your wife's texting you. Your phone's out, so their perception is you might be trying to take a picture. So it's a tough one. You'll find most buttoned up security guys don't have the phone out. There's not even a perception of images, because that's a lot of celebrities' biggest fear. Someone's taking a picture of them doing something that whether it's not even inappropriate, maybe just they're drinking water and they don't want to, so no, they don't want cameras around, so it's something I definitely have to enforce with guys.
Well, I can definitely see that. And not to mention, if you're sitting there taking a picture or doing something along those lines, you're probably not as in tune with what's going on in your surroundings as you should be anyway, protecting them.
Yeah. And it's tough because I have a client right now I take care of. I've only had him for 6 months. He only comes in town once a month, but his assistant will text me and I'm driving him too. I have a guy with me. We get to a location and I'll look at my phone after maybe I drove for 45 minutes, and she'll say, "Call me." I'll call her. She goes, "You're not replying to my text." I said, "You don't understand. I'm with the client. I'm not looking at my phone." She goes, "Yeah, but you got it." And I said, "That's just not how I do it. I can't look at my phone while I'm with the client because then they're going to think I'm not paying attention to them." And I said, "There's nothing more important," and that's what I try and tell guys too. There's nothing more important in the world right now than what you're doing in front of you. And I realize we live in that world of instant gratification, or where, well, my wife texts me and I didn't get back to her in 5 minutes, and she thinks I'm cheating on her because I didn't pick up my phone. It's like, you know what I mean? By the way, guys are like, "Oh, I got to call my wife right back." And listen, I'm here to do a service, and I have to pretend I'm back in the 80s when I have a cell phone. It's in my pocket, and I don't think anything's going to change for the next hour till I look at my phone, why I have a break or something,
Yeah, and we made it through the 80s and 90s without being able to call everybody right back in 5 minutes.
Isn't it wild?
Yeah.
I was telling someone this just a minute ago. We were talking about the LA riots, because I was a cop then. I didn't have a phone. I think I had a pager, but the riot started. I went home and checked my answering machine, which that's a novelty, right? And they said, "Hey, Cardenas, the city's starting to burn down. You got to come back to the station." But no one was calling me immediately. I had to wait till I got home and check my machine. So,
yeah, such a different time,
right?
So, how did you kind of transition? From what you were doing there, you ended up then working for Quest Nutrition, which was kind of a startup at the time that I think you went there. Mm-hmm. They've since sold for $1 gazillion and done a lot of good things. But I always find it interesting when I hear you tell the story. You went the first 8 or 9 months that you worked for them without collecting a paycheck. Is that correct?
That is true. So it was really a serendipitous kind of thing. Shannon, who goes by Quest Creator on social media, she worked out at the gym where I worked out, and I would see her occasionally. And she was one of those. She was a fit, like a figure. She worked out, competed, and she was reading bodybuilding magazines, which I thought was on when she did cardio, like Ironman. So sometimes I would end up next to her doing cardio and just small talk. "Hey, how's it going?" Fast forward a few months later, I go to the Los Angeles Fitness Expo just as a consumer. And she's there at her table, 6-foot table, with 2 flavors of bars, vanilla almond crunch and peanut butter, with her husband, Ron, and one of their partners. And, oh my God, there's the guy from the gym. "Oh, Shannon, I didn't know you had a protein bar company." And she said, "Oh, we just started it." Gave me some samples. And I've always been into fitness and working out. And at that time I was pretty serious about working out. And I remember I took them home and tried them. And I saw her in the gym the next week and said, "Those bars are amazing. Like, holy cow, I don't know how you guys did it." We kind of just built a fast friendship. And I think that same time I said, "Hey, by the way, a friend of mine who I do some security work is having a charity golf tournament at Riviera Country Club. If you have some product, I could get it in some people's hands." And she's like, "Oh my God, that'd be amazing." So I think she even dropped them off at my house like the next day. And at the time, the bars were so expensive to make because they were making them by hand. But they just started manufacturing. It was not a cheap endeavor. So they dropped off a few boxes, and I remember I got them some hands of some celebrities. And and I don't know what it's interesting because I never had any experience. I didn't know what to do. It wasn't like I had a background in like marketing or PR, but I knew enough that my friend, I said, this woman invited me to the golf tournament. So I got him in some hands and I said, hey, can your person take some pictures and videos? So they took some pictures, and then a couple of people did an interview. Some YouTube girl was there. This was actually that was even before Instagram. Did an interview, taste testing it on her YouTube channel. So I said, hey, can you gather all that content and send it to me? It wasn't anything great, but it was some pictures. And they're like, Bruce, like, wait, how do you know these people? Like, wait, how did you do that? And so I kept doing that. And I had the security contract for the set of Extra at the time. So I got him on the set of Extra with Mario Lopez. And I remember one time Mario was even giving it out to the crowd and it was on camera. So I was doing all these cool things, helping them. You just give me product and I'd help get it in people's hands. And so I started doing that. And I don't know, I just had it literally fell in love with what they were doing. There was no promise of tomorrow. Matter of fact, I went from I had my security business still, which was housed inside of a private limousine company, which was the largest in the country at the time. When my best friend owned that company. So I would help him. I was helping him with relationships in the limo business, had the security business, and I would go visit Quest. Sometimes I'd go out there by like 1 p.m. and visit their office. And it was in the ghetto. It was literally on the border of Compton. And it was in this warehouse space, it was literally, I'm thinking, holy shit, they're not going to be in business in 6 months. Like, when you pull up to a building, you're like, are these guys for real?
Yeah.
And it was no signage. Went in and they had I think they might have had a total of 8 employees. And they were stacked in these offices. We prided ourselves. Funny, they used to buy those little mini IKEA desks, those mini desks you get for like your school kids. That's what they used. So I visited a couple times and they were like, hey, can we talk to you? Like, what's your story, man? Like, are you like working for a competitor and you just want to find out all about our business? Or are you just really a nice guy? And I said, well, I believe I'm a nice guy. I said, your product's great. It doesn't really cost me anything. I'm getting in people's hands. And so I think it was almost 9 months to the date, the founder, Ron, who's Shannon's husband, we went out to lunch and he said, hey, listen, starting Friday, we're going to start paying you. He goes, right now we're stealing from you. You're bringing the more value than anyone we've ever met, and we haven't paid you a dime. We're going to start paying you Friday. I said, you don't need to do that. No, you could give it to a charity, but we're going to start paying you. They started paying me, let's just use this number. It was probably the average American income at that time. So nothing is going to change my life, but it was like, okay, that's cool. That's a nice income. And there's something clicked in me. I don't know what it was, like an ethical thing, or maybe how I brought up with my dad. Like, I felt so compelled to then prove myself, because then I was like, holy shit, I'm actually getting paid by these people. And I started performing, and I really fell in love with what they were doing, the process. And while I still maintained the security business, I just kept focusing more and more on that. And fast forward, I mean, I won't bore you with the whole story, but I built out the relationships with GNC and Vitamin Shop, and I did a lot of cool stuff and we hired 3 PR firms. I was responsible for bringing all 3 of those in. And I think within a 10-year period, we sold to Atkins for $1 billion cash. And that was coming up, this fall will be 3 years since we sold.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, but so, by the way, go ahead. I'm trying to get quiet. I don't want to talk too much because I know you have questions, but I have a couple things I would say about that.
No, go ahead.
Well, I always say this. I was the least qualified person to work in a nutrition company. Who was I? I was a dumb Marine and a dumb cop. I mean, a middle-class kid from New Jersey, and all of a sudden I elevated to the chief communications officer, which sometimes when I say that, I kind of laugh to myself. What the fuck does that mean, chief communications officer? But I was in charge of relationship building. I literally figured out relationships are not hard. Just talk to people. Even our partners, sometimes our salespeople, and this is inherently true, I think, with any company that has tremendous growth. Salespeople become, I hate to say it, but order takers. You don't worry about outbound calls. You're just like, you're taking calls. GNC, I need another pallet. Now Walmart needs it. They weren't so focused on the relationship building. They were focused on getting product out the door. And then I, in turn, would be, hey, this person's not happy. The Vitamin Shop has a charity golf tournament. Well, of course we're going to participate. Yeah, of course I'm going to come support it. Oh, you have a bike ride you want to do? Yeah, we're going to support that too. Oh, there's a bodybuilding show. And I became the guy that was on the road. I don't know, there's 52 weeks in a year. I was probably on the road 46 weekends a year. for 6 years straight, and I got us involved with the CrossFit Games. But what I figured out was it's a healthy product, and who's turning down healthy food? So it was easy. But I learned this everywhere I went. I wore Quest apparel. I had a backpack every flight I went in. There was not a flight attendant or a captain that didn't get our product. And I just became known as the guy that I didn't care who you were. I was going to touch you, and you were going to make sure you tried our product. And people write these crazy emails and say, holy shit, I met this guy on a plane. He gave me product. Where do I carry it? And I mean, to me, that's where I think my skill set is, just building relationships, whether they're, casual relationships or you become, serious relationships, and you have partnerships that grow out of it. But that was my spot. Like,
is that something that you've always done, or did you learn that from somebody, being able to build relationships like that?
I can't, I want to even, so my dad was a contractor. He was a very kind guy. He had, but I don't know. I cannot pinpoint anywhere that someone said, here's how you do this. Because I wish I could. I wish I could say, hey, I just, even when I was a cop, and it's weird because when I tell people I was a cop, rather than my friends that know me, because it's funny, the other day, I was at Starbucks and some woman said, are you a cop? I go, what? She goes, you kind of carry yourself like a cop. I'm like, is that good or bad? Like, I don't know. She goes, no, you look very confident. She goes, I like it. But anyway, my point is, even when I was a cop, I just always felt the need to, I was very compassionate. I had empathy for people. Like, I would look at someone and say, okay, here's a single mom. My partner, we'd stop someone sometimes, single mom, and her registration's expired. And there were certain policies which, at police work, hey, you have to impound a car if the registration expired in more than 6 months. And I'd be telling her, I said, well, hey, we're not impounding the car, man. I mean, think about this. She's a paycheck away from being homeless. And that's kind of how I treated people. So I still felt need to serve people, because many people are just a paycheck away from being homeless, right? That doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean they're criminals. And just because someone shoplifts, maybe because they got feet. So I would always think about that. I mean, listen, there's a difference. There's the hardcore criminal that's going in stores, killing people, for sure. That's a bad person. But then there's the other people that they shoplifted for food, or they did things because to get by. By the way, that's not a normal cop mentality either. And my partners, sometimes they'd be like, dude, you're too nice. But on the other hand, if someone was a bad person, that's a different conversation, right? But I always felt the need to feel like I'm here to serve you. Hence our motto was to serve and protect. I think a lot of people forgot that when we were cops. You're still here to serve you. You're a citizen. You might. I'm here to make your life better. So it just kind of happened. And by the way, the security business for sure is 100% service. Like, going out of your way to figure out what people. And I had an artist one time say to me, big artist, one of the biggest in the world, said, hey, have you ever thought about starting a management company? And I said, no. She goes, you should, because you really care about what's going on around people. Like I would advance things for her and make sure there was things in her dressing room, things in her car, things that I knew the things she needed. And she goes, my fucking manager doesn't do that, but you're doing it. She goes, you should think about, and I look back and think, shit, I should have started a management company. But so to answer your question, I've read books, but no one's ever said, here's how you treat people. Kind of weird, right?
Yeah, and I almost wonder if it has something to do with how well you're able to read people, kind of like you were able to read the single mom that's a paycheck away from being homeless. I'd imagine that helped you, with the security part of it when you're dealing with top celebrities, being able to read them. Okay, they're having a bad day. I need to stay the hell out of their way. Or I need to go above and beyond and provide a little extra service because, something's bothering them.
100%. I call it. It's me. I read people, or it's like friends of mine don't have social cues. They don't know. I said, I say this. I walk into a room, and I'm either just a guest, or maybe I'm a host, or I'm a guest, but I'm not. And I'm not used where I'm not important. But you have to gauge where you are in each setting, right? Like even with John's podcast, sometimes I would come in and, come on in. So and so is here. So I'd be like, I'm not. Dana White's there. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not. I just need to sit in the corner and be quiet. Now, some people don't know they don't know social cues. They're like, oh, there's Dana White. Hey, Dana, big, and they kind of overstep their welcome. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah,
it's no different.
It's funny you say that because, like I was telling you before we started recording, I always thought John was a great connector of people, and he was, but he would always give you credit as being the best that he knew of doing that. And when I first met you, you were sitting behind his desk, not really, you were not the focal point of any conversation going on. You were just kind of sitting there observing things.
Yeah.
And I remember asking John, I said, well, who was that out there? And he's like, well, that's Bruce. And he was horrible. He never gave anybody last names.
Yeah. It's true.
And he's like, I always talk about Bruce. I'm like, oh, that's Bruce? He didn't even, you were very cordial, but you weren't like having to be the center of attention. And
I've always learned to adjust.
And I think a lot of it too, in having conversations with you, even like in some places that were busy, is you're always like super present to the person you're talking to.
I try to be.
Yeah, at least that's the way I always took it, that, you're very present, very aware of all your surroundings, your situation, and like I said, just very present with the person you're having a conversation with. And that's why I was always interested in, is this something that you learned from somebody or just developed over time?
I may need to change my story and say I learned it from some homeless guy or something. I feel like I don't know. I just, and I think my parents, the only thing I do tell my friends, because I'll show up at someone's house, I never show up empty-handed. And it doesn't matter what it is. And I guess my parents taught me that, but I didn't have some respect. I was just a middle-class kid. It's not like I had some proper etiquette. So I don't really know. But I think if you want to get all like feminine and love languages or whatever, I get pleasure out of pleasing other people in ways of service. Like if I can make someone feel good about themselves, or I could do something, I don't know. I'm sure there's books written on it, but I don't know. It brings value to me.
And is there something along those lines that you have learned from like being around people that execute at the top of their game? Is there like a common trait that you see from people that we consider like to be the best at what they do?
You mean things I've learned from them?
Yes. Like that you've picked up on just the way they may maybe carry themselves or how they treat other people or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And listen, I've been pretty fortunate to run into some of the, some of the same people I do. And I really do. I admire, I've spent a little time with Bedros lately, Koulian, and there's certain things how he lives his lifestyle, and like he has, purpose. And like he even says there's purpose over pleasure. That's interesting. That could be interpreted in a lot of different ways because everyone loves pleasure in life, right? But I feel I'm purpose driven. I mean, we all want to have pleasures, but there's certain things I picked up on different people. And even recently he said something at a speech, which I really resonated. I think, I told him I'm going to steal it. Like the average man inspires nobody and vice versa. No one grew up and said, hey, I want to just be average. I want to drive an average car and have an average life and an average house. No one grows up thinking like that. And that's something I've learned from these people. We all want more out of life. And whether we achieve it or not, it's still what we want. No one is just happy just settling for what they get. Right. That's what I believe anyway.
Yes. And that, and you bring up Bedros, and I heard an interesting story on him the other day from a friend of mine that he knows out in Florida. They got together for lunch. I think he said it lasted probably over 3 hours. And Bedros runs, for those that don't know, he runs a very successful franchise, Fit Body Boot Camp, and a bunch of other things. But he said even as busy as he is, over the 3 hours that they spent together for lunch, he never took his phone out one time.
That's true. So yeah, we got to know each other recently in the last less than a year. I met him 2 years ago at a book deal he was doing. He wouldn't remember me, but I showed him a picture. But we connected, and I went out to his headquarters, and he toured it. I remember it like yesterday. We worked out together for an hour, got changed, went to lunch, talked for another hour, and you're right, he didn't look at his phone. And I commented on it. He goes, well, you're here. Like I have nothing else going on. I know where my wife is, I know where my kids are. I know my calendar. He goes, if I don't give you my undivided attention, I'm not respecting your time. Yeah, really. And that's something, I'm around some people and sometimes I have to call them out. Like if I'm talking to you and you're looking at your phone while you're listening, I'll stop talking. And then I'll wait till you look up and say, well, I know you obviously can't. We can't do two things. There's no way you can read out your phone and listen to what I'm saying.
Yes.
But that's the society we've become too, though. People, oh wait, give me a minute, and you just can't do both. So, but I picked up a lot of cool traits, especially him. I mean, there's different people I learned from. Dan Fleischman and Andy Purcell and Ed Milet. Everyone has their nuggets that I think we all take away from. But yeah, Bedros I really admire because he's offered to help me And he's just a kind person.
And that's something you get to see a lot of those people you just referenced up close and personal, where, a lot of times we are, we're seeing them through social media or through, one of their speeches they might give or a podcast or something like that. So it's always good to hear that when somebody says, well, this is how they are when the cameras aren't rolling, when the mics aren't on.
Yeah, no, some, listen, I think for the most part, most of those people that and I know are pretty authentic. I mean, they didn't get where they are, by being frauds,
Yeah. You mentioned that when you were on the road like 46 out of 52 weeks a year. And even like now, it seems like you're always traveling, whether it's a bodybuilding show or whatever the event might be. But the one thing it seems like you always stay on track, stay disciplined with not missing a workout. How hard is that? Because I know, like for me personally, when I travel, if I'm not careful, and still many times it still happens, I fall off, I skip workout, my eating goes to crap.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. I mean, I'm no Jocko. Like I'm not, I'm not. I'll be honest with you, but I'm pretty regimented. If I'm in town, I have two training partners. Actually, we meet 7 a.m. I'm always the first one there. We work out diligently. Now, sometimes, I got to travel on Thursday. I'll do I don't remember where I was. I went to Vegas. I worked out at, Bally's Casino had a like a hotel gym. It was fine. I just did a little something. I think for me, it's a psychological thing too. I need to do something. I'm not going to get the same level of workout because I do like working out with someone as kind of keep me moving or get me, motivate me. But I still like doing something. Or if I go to a city, I'll maybe go on a hike. But it's not as easy, especially eating right. You're on the road and you're, going out to eat or restaurant or fast food. But I definitely am very committed to working out. I always have been,
And is that something that you've always done? Even like you mentioned when you were in the Marine Corps that you were involved with powerlifting. So is that a area that you've always been involved with?
Yeah, always. I think, I wasn't some rock star as far as an athlete in high school, but I did okay. And I think we had a weight room and our wrestling coach encouraged it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like putting on a little muscle. And it's just always been something I've done. Yeah. And I think, honestly, I have a couple pictures when I was in my early 20s or around the Marine Corps time. I was a pretty big boy. And I think I aspired to be the next Arnold, like everyone, if you did any kind of lifting, and I had a poster of him in our rec room. I think through the, period, that Marine Corps time, I thought, I'm still going to compete in bodybuilding. I'm going to be somebody, but, so I've always enjoyed it. And that's it.
So it's got to be pretty cool to come full circle now to be around, I've seen you post pictures like with Arnold or just the other day with Jay Cutler, the guys that have reached the pinnacle of that sport, for you to be able, as a lifetime fan of that, to be able to be around them.
Yeah, it is interesting because I don't care what anyone says. There's a fanboy in us, right? It's just a matter of where you keep it hidden, right? Because I've met people and I'm like, holy shit, like, wow, I'm in the White House. Like, but yeah, Arnold was interesting because he was a client on and off for, over 20 years, just if it was a movie premiere or something for his family. But yeah, it was interesting. I grew up like, oh, wow, that's the guy, kind of same thing with a few other celebrities I've had the good fortune to work around.
Well, I was going to ask if you ever still get awestruck from anybody that you're working for, or, like the fanboy comes out and be like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this.
There's only been a couple where, like, I remember when my mom was alive, she related. I did something with like Sammy Davis Jr. because that was her era. And that ended up in People magazine. And then I did something for Frank Sinatra, and he was up there in years. And she was like, oh my God, wait, you met Frank? Good. Tell him I said hi. I said, sure, Mom. But there's a few people, and one person, which I don't think I fully embraced when I was with him. I think I was younger. The Dalai Lama, who came in town for 3 days. It was a book tour. He spoke at UCLA, and I don't even remember how I got connected, but someone called me and said, can you take care of him? I was like, yeah, sure. Now I really appreciate who he was. I mean, that's like, to me, when I tell people that's like, it's like you meeting the Pope or whatever level of religious beliefs you have. And I spent 3 days with him. And I even then took him up to Santa Barbara, and his assistant said, hey, we want to thank you for your service. He called me to his hotel and gave me a signed book, and we sat down for a minute and I didn't, he asked me to sit down, but like those are meaningful. Like those are to me, not life changing, but that's like something. Wow. Like I spent time with the Dalai Lama and he actually acknowledged me, gave me a book, signed a book to me. So there's few people that, yeah. Hey, I was with celebrity A in Hollywood. I mean, Mariah Carey was a celebrity for a decade. Courtney Love was a celebrity for over a decade, or a client for over a decade. That's cool, but I think you go from you're a celebrity, or then you're like or not a thought leader, but a life you're changing millions of people's lives based on who you are. You know what I mean? More so than just being a movie star.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So interesting. So, like, do you have any advice? I know, because we always hear about how important relationships are, building networks. To me, it doesn't matter what business you're in. Like you've said earlier, it comes down to service and building up a network, relationships. Do you have advice for people that really struggle trying to do that?
Yeah, I told someone recently because I told my Quest story, and I think it was a small group, and they're like, yeah, but that's easy. Yeah, that was Quest. It was a brand new company. And like, in other words, their pushback on me was, well, I couldn't do that at Microsoft, or I couldn't do that at Apple. Maybe not. Maybe you can. I mean, yeah, because they're a little more established. You can't, corporation, here's your paperwork to be an intern. But I said, think about this. Quest was a startup company, whatever it was in 2010, or I'm losing track of years. There's startup companies every day. There's always someone starting a mom and pop gun store or a nutrition company and I said, if you want to get in that space, track them. I mean, social media, everyone advertises what they're doing, right? Hey, yeah. I just started this protein cookie. Reach out to that person. I mean, you want an opportunity. Sometimes you got to make the door. You got to go introduce yourself and say, hey, I may not be the most qualified, but let me do what I did. Let me start helping. Can I come in at night and make cookies for you? Can I earn my way into your company? Now, the problem is most people, and it's funny, they used to use me as an example at interviews. Sometimes they say, hey, Bruce, we got a kid coming in, or, I say kid because everyone's younger, right? But someone's coming in, they want to work in marketing. So I'd come in and sit in the interview, and partway through the conversation, looking at the resume and, okay, great. Your resume looks great. So you're here for what? Hey, I want to be the director of marketing. That's wonderful. What qualified you? Well, I just graduated Pepperdine, and here's my resume. And I want $150,000 a year and everything else that goes with that. And they say, Bruce, how long did you work for us for free? About 9 months. And then all of a sudden, the look on this person's applicant's face is like, what? And then I'd share my story to a certain extent. And it would either deflate people, or they'd say, okay, well, let me know. There was a couple of people that said, okay, well, I'll start as an intern then. What do I need to do? But very few people do that. Most people, I get it. You need to have an income, or maybe there's a reason why you can't do it. But I tell people this all the time. Great. You work 9 to 5 at whatever, Oracle or wherever your day job is. Well, what about after 5 o'clock? You could create your own website. You could sell stuff on Amazon. You can, there's 100 businesses you can start on your own. So I always tell people that the opportunity is there. Yeah. Is it hard? Yeah, for sure. Are you going to fail? Possibly. But there's always an opportunity to seek a company out that's just starting out and say, let me bring value with asking nothing in return. But most people, that's weird. I don't know. How do I approach Scott? He's already got 3 guys building guns. You know what? Let me just start sweeping and reloading ammo for you on weekends. I don't know. Let me do something to bring value to your business and show you that I'm really interested in growing this business with you. You know what I mean? Yeah,
because I think so many people, like you said earlier, well, I can't do that at this business or that business. Their mind instantly goes to why it can't work or why it won't work. Yeah. Versus seeing what possibilities are out there. Like you said, okay, maybe it doesn't work at your 9 to 5. But in today's world, there's a million opportunities that can take place after 5 o'clock. And
there's 100 of them. Friends of mine that are trainers, they work at a gym. I said, so start training people on weekends on your own. And if you establish enough business, then create your own personal business, your own training business.
Well, that's how our business was started. My dad worked a day job that had benefits and, all the security that came with. And he did that. And then he'd come back and work at night in you could call it a shop. It was more like our basement.
Yeah.
But he would do that until, from 6 p.m. to midnight every night. And he slowly built that up till he got to the point that he could actually do that full time.
Yeah, I tell people this. I even tell friends of mine that are CEOs or whatever level you are, you're hiring. I said, don't ever turn away the kid that's coming in. If he's bright eyed and is eager to learn and you just give someone a shot. Maybe you don't even have a position, but here, look, I worked for 9 months for free. If someone wants to endure that, now I say that because I also had my own business. So it's not like I was like, oh shit, I'm sleeping on my mom's couch. I mean, so everyone has their situation, but I was able to, I could afford it because I was technically had my own business. I was helping them part-time, but there's always opportunities. I always tell people this, one thing, and I'll conclude this relationship part. When I was in the security business deep, I had a pretty successful client and we were going to it was a music event, a big awards dinner. I don't remember what it was, but so I used to always, advance an event. So I'd go while the client's still at the hotel and I'd go check out the restaurant or the party venue and, see what's going on, make sure everything's in place. And there was this kid I saw a couple times. I say kid, he was probably 19 years old and always hanging out like where the press were, because they were always like confined behind like bicycle racks for security. And this one event, he said, hey, excuse me, sir, your name's Bruce, right? I go, yeah. I said, yeah, can I help you? He goes, well, I know you're in charge of security for this client that's coming. He goes, I'd love to say hi to him. And I said, well, I don't know if that's going to happen. I said, who are you? He goes, well, I came from back east, but I have some ideas in the music space. And I said, well, we're probably not going to stop and he introduced himself. And there's something that clicked in my head. And I thought he was a really nice kid. So when we were leaving the hotel, as we're pulling up to the venue, I said, hey boss, I don't normally do this, but just so you know, this kid over here we're going to walk up to, he wants to say hi to you. And I felt, because by the way, the client would always say, hey, let me know if people ever want, he didn't ever want to be perceived as someone that was like not approachable. Right.
Yeah.
So we get out, I said, and he goes, okay, so we stopped. I didn't really hear the conversation, but they chatted for 30 seconds was probably it. He turned to his assistant and said, hey, get this kid's information. That was it. We walk in, never saw this kid again. This is what's weird. This past Super Bowl, so this was probably 16 years ago this happened with this kid, right? The most recent Super Bowl, I'm in a suite with a different client at the SoFi Stadium. And at SoFi, the suites are, you could see through the glass to the next suite. You could see who your neighbors are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and for those that don't know, SoFi is probably the most expensive stadium in the NFL.
Yeah, by far. Yeah,
by far.
So the Rams had this. Yeah, it's a pretty cool space. So I'm looking. And I sensed someone was looking at me. Anyway, no sooner than the security guy, I'm in the suite with this guy. The door says, "Hey, Bruce, there's some guy to see you." So I step out because I'm with the clients, but they're doing their thing. I'm just there. I step out, and as soon as I see him, I go, "Man, that guy looks familiar." And he goes, "Hey, Bruce, you're Bruce." Like, yeah. He goes, "I don't know if you remember me." And as soon as he said it, I was like, "Oh my God!" And he hugged me, and he's like, "It's kind of hard to even say it. Kind of weird. I get emotional thinking about it." He said, "You changed my life by that introduction." He goes, "I don't know if you know this or not." And his wife's with him, and she goes, "I know all about you, Bruce." He got an internship. The guy gave him a shot. The assistant called and he said, "I'll go in," and he worked for like 4 months for free. He ended up starting his own company. The suite he was in next door to me was his. And he literally said, "If you didn't make an introduction, none of this would have happened." And I go, "I didn't really do anything." He goes, "No, you took the time to respect me, to acknowledge me and introduce me to your client, or at least, make it happen." And I got to tell you, he said, "You've changed the course of my life." He goes, "I'm a multimillionaire." And so I reflected back and thought, this was just me by saying, "Hey, here's a kid that wants to say hi to you." And it blew me away.
And it goes back to your ability to be able to read people and say, there's something different here. Like you even said, you go, "Hey boss, I don't normally do this, but this kid wanted to say hi."
Yeah. And literally he said, "You don't understand. Like I went on," he goes, "Not only did, I learned from that business. I started my own business out of that. And his wife who was there, he goes, I met her. She was in the legal department in the same place I was an intern." And he said she had no interest in going on a date with me because I was an intern. So fast forward, they're married with 2 kids. But anyway, I always tell people this: don't ever negate who you meet, or don't ever disregard who you meet. Yeah, listen, you never know who you could help. Who knows whose life you could change by just being kind to somebody,
Well, and I think that's a great lesson for me, even that if you look at it from that way, that just being kind to one person that you don't think is going to be able to help you in any way, but yet you can, take 30 seconds out of your day to be kind. You never know how you're going to completely change their life like you did with this kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell people this, I have friends of mine, acquaintances, I bust their chops sometimes. They're very transactional. They'll be with me, and 30 seconds in, they're telling my friend, here's what I do for work. Oh, here's my card if you ever want to order something, widgets. And sometimes I'll say to them, dude, don't make it always about the business. I said, just be about you. Like, just, hey, I'm Scott. I'm a cool guy. Like, hey, I'm glad to meet you. And things come. I said, I'm not a transactional person. I'm like, it's going to happen no matter what. But it doesn't have to always be the first thing in here's my card if you ever want to buy something from me. But there was a point to that. Sometimes it's just about building a relationship, and other things are just going to come no matter what, right? Because they're going to like you, and then they're going to, hey, by the way, what do you do? Oh, I do the following. Oh, shit, that's cool, But yeah. And sometimes people are just how much money they can get out of meeting someone, as opposed to sometimes it's just okay to meet people. Maybe nothing will happen today. Maybe it's 10 years from now something will happen,
Yeah, like in this case, you said it was 15 or 16 years later, you find out you completely changed this kid's life.
Yeah, wild, right? Yeah. So.
And I had a thought on that. I completely lost it. Something to I completely lost my train of thought on that. But and I think that there's like so many lessons there of just building those relationships, and that's something we always try to do is build a relationship versus making it transactional. Like you said, the transactions will come if everything else is in place.
It always does.
Oh, I know where I was going with that. The one thing, that my point prior to that is the other thing I've always noticed about you is, and John would always talk about this with you, is you are very good at always connecting people, but not having to then interweave between those two people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
If you connected them, that was your service. You didn't need to then stay in constant contact to make sure that you were a point of emphasis between those two people.
Yeah, and listen, and by the way, yes, that's what I practice. It's funny, a few friends of mine connect, and they'll start a text thread. They'll always stay on it, and I'll be like, okay, I guess he wants to be included. Now, I do realize this, and sometimes I take a step back and think, I am a nice person. I like connecting people, but then I'll hear the story about I've connected two people and they went on to become millionaires together because they did some deal, which I sometimes say, shit, I should get a brokerage fee for connecting people, but all tongue in cheek, I like connecting people. And by the way, I've had people just surprise me out of the blue. I had two people connect, and the guy, he actually sent me a note saying, hey, just pick a place you want to go on vacation. He goes, I don't care what it costs. And I connected two friends, and it would have never happened because the guy I knew really was very sheltered about who he talked to. And the guy out of the blue just said, like a year later, say, hey, by the way, I did a pretty good deal. I made a few $100,000. And I just want to send you on vacation somewhere. I was like, oh, shit, you didn't have to do that. But so it was kind of like a surprise life thing. And so sometimes people just, and I'm the same way. I had a kid one time, and to this day, he talks about it. He got me a security contract, and he said, hey, I just want to connect you. And I did it for about a year, and I did okay. At Christmas time, I bought the guy a brand new Rolex because I was making money. And he's like, dude, sometimes it's just okay to do shit for people. There's no motives, there's no agenda.
And I think you can tell when they're, like in your case, you're doing it without a hidden agenda of, hopefully I connect these guys and they buy me a vacation. That would obviously never enter your thought process.
Yeah.
So I got one.
I always say this: do things for people with no expectation. No expectation. I mean, it's always nice to get a thank you, but don't have an expectation. If you live your life like that, it'll come back. Because if you start having expectations, then you do things that have different motives. Like, hey, I'm doing this because, you may not say it, but that's what you want. Listen, we all, just be a good human.
And if you're keeping score in your head, it's going to eventually haunt you, I think.
Yeah. For sure.
I always had a mentor of mine talk about, he's like, if I open the door for somebody, I'm not opening it for them. I'm opening for how it makes me feel. I don't care if they say thank you or anything. I'm doing it for myself internally. I'm not doing it for the external reward. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that was a good way to look at things.
Yeah, and it's a good way. It's just I think it's like a feel good thing, Just you connect people, and if something great comes of it, wonderful. I feel fortunate enough, and I think John was the same way. You don't realize there's some people that just are not limited, or they don't realize what they're capable of. And as simple as saying, "Hey, how do I get a hold of Scott at this firearm company?" Oh, you don't. I don't know how to reach out to him. It feels good to be able to say, just text him and say, "Hey, I met John or Bruce," and you know, I don't know if because people don't really know how to think beyond or they're nervous about reaching out to a stranger. I don't know, but I enjoy it. I mean, I always say this: my Rolodex is free to people. It's up to you what you do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's, I think, the way John always operated too. And he connected me to a lot of different people, including, meeting you and some of the other people I met down at his studio.
Yeah, he would crack me up. It's funny because he would say, hey, send, Ben, reach out to Ben. And then a day later, I'd be like, I already told you who Ben is. I go, but who's Ben? Like, he goes, you met him at the show. I go, Ben who? Like, what company? Like, yeah.
Yes, he would always do that. I'd be like, you got to give me more information.
Yeah. He goes, you got to send some product to Ben. And he hated it because sometimes I ask him 2 or 3 times. Anyway.
So I got one last question for you, then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I always feel like people have one, like I call it a pivot point, like one event that happened in their life that kind of set the course for everything else that's happened since then. So even at the time it maybe was good, wasn't so good, but you can kind of look back and say that's that aha moment that changed everything. Do you have anything like that?
I probably have a couple, and one was, I learned work ethic from my father, who was a contractor, but he was a construction worker. He did the work himself. He owned a construction company. But I remember there's 2 things. It was I was on a job site with him he would take me on a job site sometimes on a Saturday. And I remember he was digging a ditch. He was going to run conduit. And so it had to be like 36 inches deep. And there was other workers around. And I said, Hey Dad, how come you're digging? You're the owner. And he said, you're right. And he hands me the shovel. And he said, yeah, here, hop in here. So on the way home, I was pissed off. I'm a teenage kid, right? So I'm some punk ass kid who said, my old man made me dig this ditch. He goes, hey, I started digging that hole so everyone sees. I lead by example, man. He goes, if you don't lead by example, how could you expect troops to follow you or do what you do if you've never dug a ditch? So that was one pivotal moment where I said, yeah, my dad's leading by example, so I need to lead by example no matter what I do. That's great. I have to show people. I can't just sit up on the throne. Hey, I'm in charge here, so you got to get down to the trenches. And probably another, I'm trying to think, that was a pivotal moment. And then there was one other so my mom was an alcoholic when we were, and when you're a kid, you don't know what alcoholic means, right? I'll be honest with you. My mom drank wine at night and fell asleep on the couch. I thought, okay, that's cute, whatever. I'm a teenager. It doesn't affect my life. But it really became a problem. My parents almost split up over it. And it was really a pivotal moment because then I realized the value of our family, because my dad said, hey, listen, I don't want to leave your mom, but she won't get help. So I went and talked to my mom and said, hey, like, Mom, I was probably a selfish little fucker, to be honest, because I was in high school. And because my dad told me, hey, we might move. And I was like, I don't want to move. But it was a pivotal moment because I had to intervene with my mom and say, hey, will you get help for us? Like, I don't want to disrupt our life. I don't want my family to fall apart. I think I switched from being a selfish, punky ass teenager to realize that, well, my family's really important to me. Like, I don't realize how valuable my family is. And I want to. So that was also, I think, a turning point where to help someone else. Like, I didn't realize, well, you have, even though I'm a child at the time, I had influence over my parents, that my mom was like, wow, my kids really do care. You know what I mean? So she changed. She was in AA for the rest of her life after that,
Oh, wow. And
yeah. But yeah, those are things that destroy families. So,
I don't think I've ever seen you drink. Do you drink at all?
No, I don't drink at all. And people will, some therapists will say, well, subconsciously it's because that I've just never acquired a taste. I'm not opposed to drinking. I just don't drink. And I could probably tell you I've been buzzed 7 times in my life. Marine Corps one time, when I was overseas trying to see what Mai Tais taste like. But I don't drink. I don't have a beer at a barbecue. I just never acquired a taste. And I always tell my friends this: have I actually missed out on anything? I've never been sick over the toilet. I've never had a DUI. You know what I mean? So I don't think I've missed.
I always wondered if it was because of the business you were in for so long, that you didn't want to, compromise your, situational awareness by drinking. So I didn't know if it was that, but I'm thinking back to that story that you just told about your mom. That's, it goes back to what you said earlier. You never know why, what one conversation could change, decades after. Like you said, your mom went to AA, since that point.
For the rest of her life. Yeah. Yeah. She was sober. So,
and I know you referenced Ed Milet earlier, who I just got done reading his book, and he talks a lot about that, how his, dad went to AA, and after drinking the first 15 years of Ed's life, he ended up sober the last 35 years of his life.
Yeah.
And I think too often we always think we don't realize how that one decision on a particular day can have life-altering consequences.
100%. Yep.
Well, Bruce, I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on today.
Yeah, I appreciate your time.
And hopefully it won't be too long. I'll see you at an event or somewhere soon, because I always enjoy our conversations and appreciate your stories.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for your time. I mean, I admire everything you've done. I mean, you make some fine weapons.
I appreciate that. If people want to follow what you're all doing and see some of those throwback pictures, is it Instagram the best place?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just Bruce E. Cardenas. That's on Instagram.
I'm always amazed. It's like a who's who of who you're going to post.
It's funny. I'm building out because part of my bucket list has now become a reality, probably from hanging out with guys like Pedros and different people. Pedro said it best. He goes, most people have a book in them. Everyone has a book, right? Because you have your own story. He goes, you probably have 4 or 5 books based on what you've done. So now I'm working with a kid that's helped me kind of for the public speaking. And so I'm going to eventually have a website and places where people can go, but I'm working on that right now. But right now it's just Instagram, unfortunately. So
do you have a book in your future that you're going to write?
I do. I've actually already chaptered out. The first book is called My Quest. I have it because, here's the crazy thing with me too. And I think one of the things I learned from these guys, self-doubt is the biggest thing in all of us. Right. And I think that's why sometimes people never pursue being an entrepreneur or starting a business. It's all self-doubt. Like, oh, I can't do that. Oh shit, I don't know how to do it. Mine with a book or even the speaking part has always been self-doubt. And then when I listen to other people speak, I think, well, shit, I'm not, and by the way, I'm not putting what they say down, but I'm saying, shit, my story is more compelling than that. Or, oh, I've done that. Or wait, how's this guy 29 years old and he's telling me how to build a business when I've already done it? So now I've decided, you know what, even if I'm not, I may never be an Ed Milet in speaking, but you know what, even if I start and I change one person's life, why not, right?
And I've told this before. My very first guest that I had on the podcast was Brandon Lilly, and he told me afterwards, he said, if you change or help one person with a podcast, he goes, that's all you can ask for. And it completely changed my whole perspective on what I was trying to do. Even like, if you look at like, you talked about self-doubt and all that. I mean, if anybody had an excuse not to succeed, it was Bedros. He came from a communist country, and he tells the story of how poor they were growing up and all the different things. And, now to see what he's done is incredible.
It really is. Yeah. And even like Andy's story, I mean, everyone, and I really am, I'm really compelled to, when I hear those kind of stories, guys literally were like broke or trying to figure out how they're going to pay their rent, and now are worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's,
And I know I said that was the last question before, but I got one more as you just said that with guys like Andy and those different guys. I think the thing that I've always learned is, we think there's something special about them, and there is, but they are also just regular guys that busted their asses to get where they are.
Yeah.
Do you see that's kind of a common theme with a lot of the high-level people you surround yourself with? That they're just regular dudes that have just worked harder than the rest of us?
And by the way, they are regular guys. They put on their pants the same way. They have the same problems. I think maybe they worked harder, or some of them worked smarter. And let's not kid ourselves. There's also, whether you want to use the word, the stars align. Luck is a weird bit. Like I never say to someone, good luck, like to an athlete, because if you're prepared, you don't need luck, right? That's how I say things. But everything has to line up, right? I mean, if Andy didn't open up that first store, everything has to make sense, and sometimes the bricks just start falling, right? I think with Quest, the timing was everything. The bars were just okay before that, and then the taste and texture people embraced, and then it just started happening. And Facebook at the time was pretty powerful. We were the first business to get on Facebook, so things start happening. So to answer your question, I think everyone, Warren Buffett, he's just a good old boy. Like But one thing I picked up on real quick, I know we got to go. Gary Vee said something recently on an interview. When he was in his 20s and he was making $50,000 a year, he sacrificed. He put money aside. He didn't go out to the clubs and buy bottle service, and didn't have to buy a brand new BMW like all kids do in their 20s. And then when the timing was right in his 30s, and he was able to buy stock in whatever Uber and Facebook he did, and he made tens of millions of dollars, he goes, I just sacrificed. He goes, I'm no smarter than anyone else. And he's another immigrant, right? He said, you know what? I'm not going to go party for these years. I'm going to save some money, which is very hard. If you tell someone right that now, but what about my vacation with my girlfriends? I'm going to Bahamas for 5 days and spending 10 grand. If everyone sacrifices now for, let's say, whatever period of time, they'll have that future, to start a business or to invest. But everyone, we all live in an instant gratification world.
Well, Andy Frisella tells a story a lot about how he was, for a long time, didn't make more than like $600 or $700 a month.
Yeah, and was getting ready to close the shop.
Yes, and now he's got all the money in the world that he'll ever need. But it took 10 years of making decisions like you just talked about, not buying the car, not buying the house.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, I appreciate it. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk soon, right?
Yes, we will. I will be in touch.
All right, boss.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And as always, thank you for listening. If you ever have any questions, comments, suggestions, hit us up at podcast@volquartson.com. Thank you.